1981, a room full of engineers, operators, and visionaries, one idea: that satellite technology would shape the future. 45 years later, you've built the most influential space industry gathering on the planet because you showed up, you invested, you built companies, you launched missions, you solved hard problems. This community made satellite what it is. And today, we are not the same event. Space is no longer a single market. It is infrastructure. It is intelligence. It is global connectivity. From cockpit to command center, from shipping lane to battlefield, from farmland to financial network, connectivity underpins it all. And this is where it aligns. Satellite and GovMilSpace sit at the intersection of commercial innovation, national security, and global infrastructure. From spectrum strategy to AI-enabled cyber defense to operational deployment, this is where the community gathers for mission success. Now, that mission extends even further. Together with Via Satellite, Cybersat, Defense Daily, and Aviation Tech Today, we are part of something larger, the Aerospace Group, connecting the leaders, technologies, and intelligence shaping the future of aerospace. 45 years built this foundation. Now, we build the next 45. Together.
Welcome to the opening general session sponsored by Thales Alenia Space. Please welcome Satellite and GovMilSpace Executive Chairman, Jeffrey Hill.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Day 2 of Satellite and GovMilSpace. This year, we're celebrating 45 years of Satellite and 40 years of our sister publication, Via Satellite magazine. Let me briefly take you back to the early spring of 1981, when a small number of satellites served an even smaller number of spacefaring nations and as specialized tools for government use. At the time, the few people who were confident that satellites would become the ubiquitous backbone of the modern digital economy gathered for the very first satellite show. Those first attendees were industry leaders tasked to chart a course through an era of innovation that would be defined by the geostationary satellite, positioned 35,000 kilometers above the equator and primed to revolutionize global television broadcasting and long-distance connectivity. As the era progressed, they would witness full operational deployment of GPS, fundamentally altering global navigation and timing for both military and civilian sectors. They would see the earliest deployments of low Earth orbit systems and mobile enterprise connectivity. By the turn of the millennium, a new generation of high-throughput satellites with Ka-band spot beam technology would open up the possibilities for rural and maritime connectivity. High-resolution satellite imagery was in full swing, saving lives and changing the way we do business. By the time I first entered the industry in the late 2000s, electric propulsion, drastic reductions in launch costs, the miniaturization of electronics, the proliferation of small sats, and an influx of private capital brought satellite and space technology into the mainstream. Think about it. Over the entire course of human history, there's this small 45-year time frame that led to the realization of reusable rockets and direct-to-device connectivity, a triumph over physics that still amazes me to this day. A lot has changed in 45 years, and that change continues to accelerate. This event serves to cultivate and celebrate that change. Our industry is currently experiencing unprecedented growth. This year, we host more than 450 exhibitors, 280 speakers, and 15,000 guests from more than 100 nations around the world, who over the course of this week will witness historic achievements and advancements in connectivity, manufacturing, propulsion, orbital debris mitigation, and space-based intelligence. My team and I are honored to serve as your hosts and grateful to have you with us here during this critical junction for our industry. Thank you for your continued support of SATShow Week. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off this morning's program by introducing SATShow Week's special guest host, Sarah Cruddas, a Los Angeles-based space journalist, international TV host, and award-winning author with an academic background in astrophysics. Sarah began her career as a BBC television presenter and science correspondent, and over the course of her career, she has emerged as a recognized thought leader in the commercial space sector, having authored 5 acclaimed books on space exploration and hosted multiple science shows and podcasts across major networks, including Discovery Channel, History Channel, the BBC, ITN, and Sky. She is your guest host and moderator for this morning's keynote Fireside chat, so please join me in welcoming Sarah Cruddas.
Hello everyone and good morning. I feel like the two people on stage with me don't really need an introduction, but we have Adel and Ramu, and we're going to be, I can't believe it's been a year since our last conversation, Adel, and just how much has changed and how much exciting stuff has been going on in terms of SES. And obviously this time last year, the merger was announced, and just some housekeeping. Of course, we won't actually be able to go into too much details, but can you begin by telling me how things are going and what you're hoping to achieve and why this merger was so important to you guys? And just for reference, I'm talking about the merger between Lynk Global.
I was going to say, yeah, which merger was that? Okay. So look, it was just a year ago, right?
Yeah.
We talked about the potential of direct-to-device, and we announced our collaboration and what we're trying to do. So lots of things going on. I mean, the industry is not slowing down. It is accelerating in terms of innovation, introduction of new capabilities, multi-orbit, software-defined, and so on. And we thought all along, as I walked into the company, that direct-to-device has a unique capability that will expand the applications in the industry and will allow us to do things that we're struggling to do today with traditional broadband connectivity. So we did a lot of work in analyzing who are the best partners to work with. Do we do it ourselves? Does SES start building their own satellites, or do we partner? And we concluded that the right company, and we can talk about why in a little bit, was Lynk. And as we made that decision and invested in Lynk, we understood also that Lynk needed to do other things. And one of those things was to, how do we scale the company? How do we bring the right spectrum? How do we make sure that we have all of the fundamentals to be able to compete in the marketplace? So that coming together between Lynk and Omnispace was a very important strategic move for Lynk, right? And we thought that was the right move and supported it all the way.
And Ramu, do you want to add to that?
Well, it's simple. He just said it better than I could. Thanks to the partnership of SES, they invested in Lynk. But there's also a side note. Before the merger, Eutelsat invested in Omnispace. So the families have now come together. And with Lynk and Omnispace, the first thing is we bring a team that really understands the direct-to-device space. We've been around since both companies since 2017. 2, we come with technology. We think that we've developed a technology that's going to be developed like software. 3, we come with spectrum. And the 4th and most important thing is we've partnered with the largest and best operator in the industry of SES and Adel. I think the key to I call it the 3-pronged approach of working in this space is the space is moving so very fast. I think if we sat here last year, you would have a much different view of what's happened with the space. There's consolidation that's happening in the space. And for us, as the new Lynk and Omni, what's helped us is having a partner like SES that can keep up in this new space and allows us to develop quickly, and we're working together to move as fast as we can. Not one is slowing up the other. We have the same mission of getting out to market as quickly as possible. So it's been perfect for us.
And I know you touched on this, but just to pick up on it, what is so unique then about this Lynk Omnispace, and then with SES involved as well, what is so unique in terms of what you can offer, particularly with competition on the market, because there is some saturation at some point, and how do you think what you've got is unique in terms of being able to succeed?
I can start and then Ramu can add. So there are multiple unique aspects of this combination, right? So first of all, you need to look at Lynk's approach to developing this technology. It's quite unique because Lynk is looking at it from a very different perspective. How do I do a low-cost, agile development, innovation, software-based technology that is very different than what's out there today? If you look at what Starlink is building, if you look at what AST is building, they're very different approaches to this. We like this approach because of its agility, because of its ability to be at the right cost points. We don't believe that a consumer, at the end of the day, is going to be willing to pay $50 per month or $60 per month. It will get to a point where it's, an incremental add to their bill in order to have this capability. So unique technology that we believe is going to scale very, very quickly. Second, the combination of SES, Lynk, and OmniSpace gives you very different economics and ability to deliver that service. In addition to space, we always need to develop ground infrastructure. We need to develop service delivery capability, go-to-market capabilities. What SES brings to the table is that ability to move traffic from a LEO to a MEO down to wherever the signal needs to be landing. That gives Lynk the opportunity to focus on space and the service itself while we take care of the ground and what we need to do without them having to put incremental capital to build that ground infrastructure. Look, the other thing that's very unique is we're bringing our spectrums together, right? So our strategy is to work with the MNOs, right? However, we need spectrum as well, independent of the MNOs, to provide the services that the MNOs really need to. Combination of Lynk, OmniSpace, SES, whether it's in MSS spectrum or C-band spectrum or other spectrums, gives us unique positioning in the marketplace. So those are some of the things I think that are pretty.
I think the other thing to add on to what Adel said is, if we're capital efficient, then we can pass that capital efficiency down to our customers. So we don't have to go build a ground infrastructure where other people might have to do it. We're using the space infrastructure to move traffic to be efficient. Therefore, it allows us to pass those costs down to ours. The other thing, which is, I think I don't know if it's unique in the space, but it's unique of how we're working. We're going to fail in this process. Like software development, my iPhone gets updated every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, because there's new software updates, there's new things. And so our philosophy of building systems we're going to build it like software, we're going to learn, we're going to redevelop, we're going to work with our MNOs, and it's that whole agility and nimble process that's important for us, because we're building satellites that can work in any spectrum, any waveform, any frequency, and move very quickly as the market is moving. Because the market is moving much faster than we've ever seen, and you have to be agile, and working with SES allows that to be agile in that aspect.
And look, the last point that you were talking about, the multi-band, right, is really important, right? Because we typically get constrained in the industry with the number of bands that we have on a satellite to be able to do different missions. Government, military applications require certain bands, right? So you got to have those on the satellites. And what spectrum you have forces you to do certain things. The other thing that's really, we are absolutely committed is open standards. 5G NTN, 3GPP compliance, being able to integrate very easily into mobile networks is one of the paramount design points of this constellation. I also think that's quite unique if you look at our competitors.
And just to pick up quickly, because we need to move on, Ramu, but just from a point that you made in terms of failure and almost like the embracing failure, which we saw obviously with the internet era of the 1990s, how valuable do you think it is for all companies in this space, no pun intended, but to actually embrace the failure and to be able to iterate to meet those changes?
Well, it matters so number one is the customer base is evolving. They're trying to figure out this space. There's new applications that are being brought up every day. Just walk into the hall, last year and the year before, there's new applications that are being developed because they want to understand the space. So you have to be able to adapt, and when you're changing rapidly, you are going to have failure. So it matters on what that percentage of failure is. You want to try to reduce that as little as possible, but you have to be able to fail, reiterate, and keep growing. And the thing that's important with SES and the combination with Eutelsat, they've been around for, since the 60s. And what amazing thing that Adel and his team have done is they're adapting into this new world order very rapidly. And so that's the partner we want that can move in this rapid pace and work together. And so that's what we bring together.
And do you want to pick up on that, Adel? Because SES is a legacy space company. So how are you adapting and not being left behind?
When I joined this industry about 2.5 years ago, to me that was one of the biggest learnings, that this is an industry that's been around for a long time, right? But it is still very much cemented in a very traditional development cycles of innovation. So it takes us 5 to 7 years with coming up with an idea and then actually making it real in space. Coming from an IT industry, that was something very foreign to me, right? Because the IT industry has moved on very, very quickly, especially with cloud and AI, into an iterative, agile development cycles, right? You gotta, develop, you gotta do sprints, then you gotta test, and you fail, you fix, and you move on. So for us in SES, we are adamant that we're gonna change that, and we'll talk a little bit about this in the next session. Our approach to our next generation MEO is exactly that. We can't afford to wait for 5 years, and we can't afford to test the system in space 5 years after we have the idea. We want to be testing in space every year. And that's what Lynk has been doing as well. Sending satellites up, testing them, debugging them, bringing them down in terms of all the learnings, and then redoing it and so on. And that's, I believe, you look at new space companies around the world, that's what they do. And if we're going to be able to keep up with this innovation, we have to change, we have to adapt. So at SES, we're absolutely committed to that.
And in terms of that, and Ramu, if you want to add as well, what challenges do you currently see moving forward in terms of D2D and what you're trying to do?
I think the biggest, number one, if everyone could raise their hand that can help us put launch vehicles on, that'd be great.
Where's Gwen?
Yeah, where's Gwen? I think, look, I think you have a lot of momentum going on. I think the challenge in this space is you're going to put a lot of satellites up. We'd like Gwen and others to launch as many as they can and be successful. But the bottleneck right now is probably putting the assets up in space. I think we all are now working our way through spectrum, which is a valuable asset, and we're working together on that. But I think the number one challenge is getting as many of these satellites up as quickly as possible would be great.
Look, a couple more challenges, right? I mean, access to capital is clearly something we have to keep working on, right? I mean, our competitors have a very attractive access to capital. They're funded by founders that have the capital and so on. So we compete in that space, right, to be able to attract that capital and be able to scale the companies. The other thing, not to get very political, look, I'm very worried about the geopolitics around the world. I'm very worried about the bifurcation of US from the Western Europe. And there are many different angles to that, right? So first is, we as space, we're global. We don't launch constellations to be local. Yeah, we launch a geo satellite that cover a particular region, but even geos, they cover very large portions of Earth. So for us to be able to navigate regulatory environments that are different significantly between US, Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America is a big challenge.
How are you planning on meeting that challenge?
Well, look, we're working through it. We're trying. I mean, SES has been known for being a Western allied company for decades. We have big presence in the US. We are a European company headquartered in Luxembourg. And we work very hard to make sure that we keep that positioning of the company. Not saying, I'm just doing this, because the market requires us to do things across the Atlantic as well. But it forces us now to think about supply chain in a very different way, right? So we are building supply chains that actually give us presence in North America and give us a different supply chain for European capabilities. And that honestly is inefficient. I mean, I'm an old guy, right? When I grew up, we were taught global. You got to drive your supply chains global. You have to be efficient, right? And today's world is we're rethinking all of that theory that we have been taught and lived by for ages, right? So that, to me, is a quite significant challenge that we all have to deal with.
So the Lynk Omnispace, we're going to be closing on the deal here in the next, after we finish the government approval, but one core principle is that we're going to be a global company. We're going to do global manufacturing, not just in the US, it'll be in Europe and also in Asia. Because if you don't address it that way, I mean, you have to be a global company with the political environment that's out there. So I think that's an important feature, and working with SES helps us get that global reach. So that's the other reason.
So being global to mitigate risk in terms of the political climate.
You have to be.
Yep.
And just moving on before we've got some fantastic audience questions, and please do send in your questions. But in terms of, I know Ramu, you touched on this slightly earlier, but who are your customers and how bullish are you in terms of these customers?
Our customers are mobile network operators, governments, people that are providing IoT services. Those are our biggest customers. Our customers is who we live and die by. We will work with them, we will partner with them, and with the SES machinery, they have the best. You ask us a question why, is because they have the best global reach and the best global market access in the world. So why not partner with them and to be our partner? So we look at that as, you know, they bring all three of those to the table and we can work with them. And that's, you know, that's how we look at it.
Yeah, look, we think direct-to-device will be way beyond just giving you connectivity and in very remote areas. That's what it's used for today. That's where people are focused on today from a consumer perspective. Every single vertical that we have, whether it's government, mobility, mobile network operators, we see use cases where direct-to-device integrates into our current offerings and expands that capability for these verticals. So it's broad.
And one of the audience questions, which is also going to be my next question, is how long before SES, Lynk and Omnispace will actually be rolling out this service for customers? Have we got a time frame in place, or?
Mid-2027. That's when we, you know, we want, that's our game plan. We're launching satellites right now as we're developing our platform, but the constellation should be up, we're aiming for mid-2027.
And what would you say was the biggest kind of like, not hurdle, but thing you need to do next? Is it ground infrastructure? Is it launch cadence?
Capital.
It's capital.
We need to get capital to start building.
Okay. So one of the
We got the technology solved. We're now into iterations of that. Capital accelerating.
Technology, right? You're talking about. We've already tested a Lynk satellite, a LEO satellite, talking to a MEO, landing signals on the Earth. So this multi-orbit
has been tested.
You know, backbone in space is something we've proven already, right? Now we just need to build.
So have you got a roadmap in place for gaining the capital?
Yes, we do.
Okay, awesome. Well, moving on to audience questions, as we only have 9 minutes left. This comes from Jerry Wilk. In your opinion, what is the best use case for D2D devices for consumers?
For consumers?
Yeah.
It's a simple one. Is look, 3% of disconnectivity rate around the world, in some places it's more, is to be able to access, you know, mobile apps when you can't. That's the best use case for users today. You can drive up and down Washington, D.C., and there's areas where you don't get connectivity. That's where it is. Direct-to-device is not going to work in a metropolitan city because you already have connectivity.
Do you want to add to that, Adel?
Look, the question was about consumer, and Ramu answered that, but you know, I'll give you another really compelling use case, which is government. I mean, connecting soldiers in the field, in operations, and today we use technologies that connect them with very specific governmental bands and UHF payloads and things like that. In the future, we see this being a very attractive connection to the soldiers, their devices, their equipment in the field that's set up very, very quickly. So that's very compelling to us.
And obviously there's going to be competition within that. How do you mitigate that?
First of all,
or do you embrace competition?
Yeah, we love competition, right? Because it keeps us, we love it and we hate it. So we love it in a sense because it keeps us agile, right? Competition is incredible. I mean, innovation is moving very, very fast, and it keeps us on our toes. But look, on the other hand, it's never easy to compete. But the good news is, today, not just for direct-to-device, but specifically for direct-to-device, there is no saturation in sight. We don't see that there is a limit today. And maybe 5 years from now, you'll ask me the same question. I'll tell you, well, now I begin to see it.
It'll be a different space industry by then.
For sure, right? But today, the demand is so high customers are asking us, mobile operators, we just came, Jean-Philippe, we just came from Mobile World Congress, right? Every mobile operator told us, even the ones that just signed big agreements with Starlink or Amazon, are all saying, look, when are you ready? Because we'd like to sign an agreement with you guys. We need, multi-supplier, multi-capabilities in our offerings. So I don't see a saturation point in the industry today.
I think one thing that we've learned going back to the old satellite industry, to new satellite industry, afraid of competition, if you don't iterate and move quickly, and competition is fast.
Yeah.
So that's the thing we've learned. If you're not going to keep the pace of competition, you're not going to make it.
And just picking up on this point, an audience question here, what role will testing play in balancing speed of deployment with quality of global offerings?
Testing.
Yes.
Testing. Look, it's like when you're doing, it's software, you got to think the same way in software development. You test as much as you can on the ground, you load it up on the satellite, you might solve, if there's 100 things you need to resolve, let's assume you're going to solve 95 of them on the ground, 5 you're going to get in space. So you have to test as best as you can on the ground, but be prepared to iterate when you're in space.
Yeah,
and that's the whole process. Learn from software development.
You got to put it in context. The customer expects flawless service.
That's right.
Yeah.
There is no excuse that it's okay, you can fail,
Yeah.
right? They expect 4 nines to 5 nines availability. So it's, when we talk about failure, think about in our development cycles. When we talk about architecture that allows us to update things, we're building that in order to be able to quickly resolve issues when we find them. So that's the architecture that allows us to be delivering the 4 nines, 5 nines kind of service.
Okay, we've got quite a few audience questions, so quick fire for the next 5 minutes. The next question is actually quite timely in terms of the room we have in space and how much satellites can actually stay there and the risk of space debris. And it is, how do you see the deorbiting end-of-life process evolving?
You have to it's a simple equation. You have to decide you're going to be a good citizen or not a good citizen. Satellites' average life might be 6 to 8 years in the LEO world. There's going to be a time where you have to deorbit it, coordinate it, do it properly. I think you have to work with your competition and do it in a very respectful way and coordinating it.
Okay, next question. I'll give you the next question, Adel. What is the pace of satellite manufacturing and is there a bottleneck?
The pace we want to get to, both from an SES and Lynk point of view, is to continue to have continuous manufacturing process and not start-stop kind of processes, right? So we want to have a supply chain that's primed to be able to manufacture every month and be able to launch multiple times a year in order to keep building your constellations. The supply chain is evolving. If you look at the traditional supply chain, it is constrained. So we're working very hard in opening up new partners coming into the supply chains, qualifying them to give us that continuous supply chain of it.
And in terms of launch cadence, what are you looking at?
From a MEO perspective, we're looking at cadence multiple times a year, right? 3-4 times a year. From a Lynk perspective,
we're going to try to do 5-6 times a year because we're going to keep putting satellites up. So our cadence is going to be more frequent because we're putting more satellites up.
And do you think that multi-orbit really, allows you to stand out in the market in terms of what you can offer and also your redundancy?
For us, unequivocally it does, for 2 reasons. I'm going to talk about, we are multi-orbit. We're going to the GEO satellite so we can monitor all of our satellites all the time. In LEO, you don't have that ability. And in using the MEO, we always have the ability to offload traffic. And so from a customer perspective, they have global connectivity continuously. So both ends are good for us. It's a requirement for us. And we've tested it, and it's a part of our heritage.
Okay, we're going to have to move on to get 2 more questions in, I think. So in terms of the top 3 applications for multi-orbit solutions, can you actually rank them? And does maritime remain at the top of that list in 2026? So what are the top 3 use cases?
Well, look, maritime is one of our biggest verticals, right? Both cruise and commercial shipping. Today we coexist with LEOs in cruise, and the commercial shipping continues to be GEO plus moving to LEO. So we see that as a great vertical as a testament to the multi-orbit. And by the way, the challenge in those, specifically in maritime, is whatever additional capacity you give them, they consume it. Right? So it's the limitation today is actually capacity, especially in congested areas like Mediterranean and Caribbean, and now the Northern Arc as well, with all the trips to Alaska and so on. So that's the great vertical. Government, look, you need to ask the governments, right? And go look up at Space Force architecture. It's a multi-orbit architecture. It's not a single orbit architecture. Look at what Europe is doing with IRIS², right? It's a multi-orbit architecture. So I'm not sure why people are still asking the question, is multi-orbit make sense? Well, just ask your customers. Look at what they're doing. Look at where they're investing.
Okay, and two very quick questions, and if you could quick fire them for me. The first one is, how many satellites are planned? And then the second one is, what is your view, Adel, on the D2D revenue contribution to SES? So how much do you think D2D will contribute to SES?
So let's start.
I'll take the first one.
Okay.
Our first phase is 320 satellites. Then after that, we put another 320, so a total of 640. That's our magic number for phase 1 and 2. I'll let him answer his revenue number.
Look, for us, revenue is not the real focus right now. The real focus is building up that constellation, right? And we believe that in 5 years, in 4 to 5 years, it will become a sizable contribution to the SES overall portfolio.
So this is about long-term thinking?
Yes, absolutely long.
And just finally to finish on, and Ramu, I know you used to be a volunteer firefighter and I wanted to get this in, but you've seen firsthand, I guess, the impacts of direct-to-device and not having it. What does it mean to you, both of you, to be involved in this and really disrupting life on Earth, using space to disrupt and improve life on Earth?
Look, we talk about having connectivity when it's a good time. You need to have connectivity when it's a bad time, and anywhere in the world. Whether I'm a fireman or not a fireman, I think that we can bring and help causes in the world. There's many people in the world that don't have any connectivity for simple banking and other things and survival. And so I think we're at the right place at the right time.
And Adel, very quickly.
I think many space companies' fundamental purpose is about what you said, which is making a difference on Earth. Whether it's breaking the digital divide and connecting people, enabling schools, enabling healthcare, education, whether it's connecting people in catastrophes, whether they're natural or man-made. That is the purpose of many companies in space, and SES is no different. If you ask our people, they are extremely proud of doing the things that they're doing.
Thank you, Adel and Ramu. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, before we move on, I'd like to thank our opening general session supporting sponsors, Thales Alenia Space, a world-leading manufacturer of satellites and ground segments that have supported countless applications for government and commercial satellites. Thales Alenia Space is a long-time supporter of satellite and GovMil space, and I'd like to now share this exciting and inspiring video as we kick off our opening session. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing this morning? Good lot of energy? Excellent, excellent. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Satellite and Gov Space 2026. And thank you to Thales Alenia Space, our Open General Session sponsor. That was an amazing video. It's great to see such a full room for what is always one of the most important conversations of the week. This session has earned its reputation as the can't-miss event because it brings together the leaders who are not just responding to change, but defining where our industry goes next. As most of you know, I'm the Senior Editorial Director of Viasat. This year marks our 40-year anniversary. We're 40 years old this year. Yeah, well, that deserves a clap. For 4 decades, we've had the privilege of covering this industry, its breakthroughs, challenges, and most importantly, the people driving it forward. What makes this community unique is that the conversations we have don't just stay in this room, they shape global connectivity. And that's exactly what today is about. The decisions, strategies, perspectives shared on this stage will help set the tone for the year ahead across technology, business models, and how we meet growing demand around the world. So with that, let's get right to it. We have an all-star panel to discuss these issues. So I'm just going to very briefly introduce them, and then we're going to get straight into it. So we have a new person on the panel today. His first time on this panel. We have Ali Hashemi, the CEO of Space Services of Space 42. Welcome, Ali. We have Adel Al-Saleh, the CEO of SES. We have Mark Dankberg, the CEO of Viasat, a veteran of this panel. We have another new person, Jean-François Fallacher, the CEO of Eutelsat. And we have someone who's been on this panel longer than I can remember, Dan Goldberg, the CEO of Telesat.
I thought that was Mark.
What was that? So we're going to start with something dangerous. I'm going to ask a lightning question, which any of you knows to get CEOs to answer a question within 30 seconds is a challenge, but we're going to try it to start off with. So the question we have, and again, 30-second answer if you can. We have a lot of technology vendors, ground segment players in this audience. What would you say is number one on your wish list from them? And see if we can answer this very, very quickly. Ali, what's your number one thing you'd like from technology vendors?
Well, this is a very easy question for us because what we are really looking for is a D2D platform that is seamless and non-exclusive for the MNOs. So all the MNOs can integrate on it in non-exclusive basis to ensure equality for the MNOs and to offer other satellite operators.
Interesting, just about kept within the 30 seconds. Good. Adele, what's number one on your wish list?
Yeah, look, I'd support Ali. It's open standards, adoption of 5G, NTN, 3GPP kind of capabilities. That would be top of my list.
Okay. Mark?
Well, main thing is just to make sure that service delivery is competitive, performance and price-wise, and that some of that is the cost of the terminals, but a lot of it are the detailed specs required to make the performance, especially with these hybrid orbit systems. So a lot of the detailed specifications need to be there at the right price point. And really, for me, the focus is on broadband. That's where a lot of the real competition is.
Okay, Jean-François, very quickly, what's number one on your wish list?
As a newcomer in the space industry, I've been working 30 years in the telecom industry. So I would really say what struck me in the space industry and what my first wish would be is really open standards, interoperability. I mean, you named it, 5G NTN, 3GPP, or other standards for the satellite industry and open standards.
Okay, and finally, Dan, what's number one on your wish list from technology vendors, ground segment players?
I'm tempted to say a low-cost, high-performing flat panel antenna, but I won't say that. What I'll say instead is it's just the way that we all work together. Telesat, at least, is still mostly in the mode where we're a service provider and we're procuring technology, satellites, user terminals and whatnot from third parties, and it puts us, I think, at a potential competitive disadvantage to those our competitors who are vertically integrated, and I think that you pick up some things by not being vertically integrated, but there's some risks around that too. And so my number one request would be trying to find a way to align our interests so that we can all in the ecosystem remain competitive against these other companies out there that are vertically integrated. So for me, that would be my ask.
Excellent, excellent, really good answers. So let's get on to some of the big topics of the day. In the year since the last opening general session, there has been a lot of change. Things like Arctic security, sovereign space strategies coming to the fore, new surprise constellation announcements from Blue Origin. What does all the change in the world mean to your company directly? How is it impacting? And we'll start with Jean-François with this one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot has obviously happened since a year. This was my first year here at the Satellite Conference. There are a lot of geopolitical changes, and I think this has been really driving very much the industry into, the importance of sovereignty. For us, obviously, Eutelsat being actually both a GEO and a LEO player. I mean, we are having the second LEO constellation providing broadband services, which is operational. This is really putting a lot of wind in our sails, and that's, to me, really one of the big change. And the second big change, I think, is also, to my opinion, the really turn of the industry towards becoming more and more a worldwide kind of telecom service provider. You just discussed before that direct-to-device. I mean, we are with OneWeb providing broadband services, LEO broadband services, but both are just broadband telecom services that we are providing seamlessly across the world. And I see the industry very much moving in that direction. So that's, to me, the big change that the situation we are living in is bringing.
Adel, what's all the change that we're seeing mean to SES and impacting what SES is doing?
I'll mention two, and Jean-François touched on it. The geopolitics change has a fundamental change to our business models, how we go forward. Right? We've got to figure out how not to depend, or how to change this huge dependency we had on global supply chain and assuming that they're always there. So figuring out how do you serve Europe, US, Asia, other markets is becoming a challenge for us. And the second big driver for us is the speed of innovation continues to just accelerate, right? So we can't have a cycle anymore of 5-year, 7-year development cycles because of these announcements that keep coming. And whatever you design has to be flexible in a way that you're able to upgrade it as you go forward. So no longer a 5-year cycle, then you assume it's going to live for 15 years or 20 years and without any updates and changes. That's fundamentally being challenged.
Okay, Mark?
Well, I think satellite industry is very complicated. They don't call it rocket science for nothing. I think that in the past being like last few decades, people have oversimplified what it is that we're doing. For our company, we started doing national security, defense type applications. We migrated into commercial, and we've always seen the overlap in requirements, needs, how the underlying technology can serve both commercial and sovereign needs. I think now, just given the geopolitical realities, a lot of countries are realizing that they need more than what they've been buying before. And I think that creates opportunity. It certainly creates opportunity for for satellite operators, regional satellite operators that are very closely tied to their governments and their region. But now we're going to have to pay a lot more attention to things like spectrum allocations, hugely important, the role of dual use, that most of the countries around the world really rely more on their commercial space systems than on the organic defense ones, and that those systems are hugely impacted by changes in spectrum regulation. Have to pay attention to what the threats are. If you look at geopolitical hotspots around the world, it's not just the military systems that are being attacked, it's the commercial ones as well. And we're only seeing the very beginnings of those. So I think that what we're really seeing is a need to rethink almost everything about the satellite industry. Different places around the world are grasping those realities at different paces, I would say. But, you know, whenever there's change, there's opportunity. And I think that for now, boy, I mean, you can look at it and say, hey, there's more change than there's ever been. It also means there's more opportunity than there's ever been, if you frame it the right way.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, I'll pick up on where Mark left off. The geopolitical developments that we're seeing out there are creating far and away some of the biggest commercial opportunities for Telesat, and I would say the rest of us. You know, and it's a confluence of things. It's all the increased defense spending that the NATO countries are doing, number one. It's how the war has unfolded in Ukraine and how consequential low Earth orbit satellite communications has been to that war. And then, yeah, maybe some of the ruptures that we've seen around the world. But all of those things married together are creating huge opportunities for those of us up here. You know, we're building a low Earth orbit satellite constellation, Telesat Lightspeed, and just a week ago today, last Tuesday, we announced that, and it's a system that was designed to operate on 2,000 megahertz of commercial Ka band. Last week, we announced that we're going to convert 25% of the constellation, so 500 megahertz, to military Ka band. And it's exactly a response to these opportunities that we're seeing out there. And we've been strongly encouraged by allied governments to make that change to the constellation. And so in any event, I couldn't agree more with some of my colleagues up here have said. Massive opportunities, and it's incumbent upon us to step up, make the investments, and provide the capabilities that are so needed right now.
I strongly agree with Mark. We have to rethink everything. And gladly, last year, we took this step forward. We established a company, which is Space 42, which put the sovereignty as a main asset. We brought a national champion that does have geospatial capabilities, and a national champion that has the SATCOM capabilities, and we power it by AI. So with AI nowadays, we can do less with more. And when the geopolitical problem that happened in the region, we were very glad that we took this step forward. So, because it enhanced our sovereignty and the application that we deliver, and it showed our resilience on the current situation. So another example of a way of thinking forward is our venture with Viasat Equities, where we put, let's say, the need of the MNOs, sovereignty and independence as the main goal. So yeah, we need to rethink everything. And Equities is an example of rethinking the example of sharing the infrastructure, sharing the spectrum, and taking a step forward in the industry.
Okay. Do you feel that further consolidation is likely given the number of potential constellations there now are? Mark, do you want to kick us off with this one?
Well, you have to navigate these conflicting things. You know, we just talked about the role of sovereignty, and sovereignty is really about control, certainty, trust, the kind of things that Ali was just talking about there, right? So consolidation is sort of the opposite of that. It's outsourcing, it's depending on third parties. So there's got to be some reconciliation for that. And that's where what we think is it's, you know, it's going to take rethinking of a lot of things. And, you know, I'm excited about the venture we're doing with Space 42, which is interesting. I mean, one of the things that is interesting about Space 42 is it's, for the region especially, it's the convergence of Earth's observation and sensing, AI, autonomy, and communications, which are the ingredients that, that countries, nations, regions need, and they need sovereignty. And I think that one of the things that we're doing to try to promote that and do it in a way that is cost effective is through shared infrastructure. So, you know, I mean, satellite space communications is one of the most capital intensive industries in the world. So in an environment where you're competing both economically and often you're competing from a national security perspective, you know, I think one of the things you need to do is you need to aggregate capital in some way that is competitive with entities that have unlimited access to capital. That's really what's a huge part of what's going on here, is just the capital investment wars. So I think that this notion of shared infrastructure as an example is one of the ways to kind of have it both ways. You can have regions, countries, institutions cooperate in a way that aggregates capital and is competitive.
So do you feel there'll be further consolidation?
Not in the way that it's one company gobbling up another, right? I don't think that that's not going to work for a lot of countries, right? What's needed is a way that, I mean, and Ali's a really good example of a region where space is really important, both economically and militarily. So I don't think they want to be acquired, right? I mean, you could ask him. I don't think that's the answer, is to be acquired. I think the answer is to figure out ways to level the playing field. That's what.
Okay. Anyone else on this one?
Yeah, look, I think there will be many different forms of consolidation. Mark talked about one of them, right? There's partnerships and pooling resources. I do believe that if you look at the pipeline of smaller companies coming up with ideas and evolving them, they get to a point where they do need access to capital, right? And access to capital doesn't come just from investors piling money in, right? It comes through consolidation and combining yourself with others. So I see those forms of consolidation continue to happen. But I do see one version of them is exactly what Mark and Ali talked about.
Before we go to Jean-François, I just want to follow up with you quickly, Adel. You've spoken recently about vertical integration. Does that involve acquiring assets in order to, or how would that work?
Not necessarily. I mean, we've decided in SES we are going to vertically integrate. And the reason we did that is because we do not see the ability to move faster, innovate faster, and control cost by doing the way we do things in the past. You could do it through an acquisition, an acceleration, but you could also do it organically. We decided to do it organically. And we decided to do it organically by hiring incredible talents that are available in the industry, that have done it multiple times. ASIC designers that are on their third ASIC version. People who've done AIT for the next 20 years. So we think that's one path potential, but you could do it through an acquisition and scale yourself.
Yeah, on consolidation, I think if we take a bit of a step back and we look at what forces are applying to our industry, first thing, and I want to rebound on what Mark is saying, I mean, obviously, this is very capital intensive, and the barriers of entry are huge. I mean, there is a number I like to put on the table. When I joined as a new CEO, I looked at how much capital was invested in OneWeb since the inception of the project in 2015, $7 billion. It took 7 years to get this constellation operational, because it's not only about launching satellites, it's also the ground, it's also the fiber network that is linking our 42 ground locations across the planet. It's the system, it's the UTs. So these are really deep tech objects, and the barriers are very high. And Dan will not say the contrary, I'm sure. So first, second, we have giants which are not at the table. But talking about Starlink, Amazon, probably 2 Chinese constellations which are vertically integrated. Our geo business is actually in a declining mode because for all reasons we know, I mean, the video business is just declining. The connectivity business is really cannibalized, and we see that by the LEO business. So all these factors, I think, are going to push to consolidation. And it has started. I mean, when Eutelsat merges with OneWeb, this is consolidation. I guess you've acquired Intelsat, this is consolidation. And where I agree with Adel is consolidation can eventually take other forms. It's not only M&A, it can be, getting together. And that's why I was saying to your first question, interoperability, and open standards. Because this is also a way to have more cooperation between actors that are around this table.
Okay, no, super interesting. I'm going to go on to the next question. Will satellite dominate discussions at Walk 2027 in a way that satellite hasn't done before at one of these types of events? You all talked about spectrum. What would be a good outcome, and how are these issues in national security going to impact the satellite industry? So who wants to take it? Mark, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. Satellite was a dominant factor in Work 23, and 27 is going to be even more intense. I think that one of the fundamental reasons is space has no borders, right? So it goes back to some of these sovereignty issues where you can have a company from space that delivers connectivity into your country whether you want it or not, as an example, right? Or in ways that are not necessarily helpful or beneficial for each country. So that's presenting sovereignty issues that didn't exist before. It's with respect to spectrum. How do countries have control of the spectrum, which is absolutely a raw ingredient for the economic competitiveness of satellites? And then how do they manage? How do they, you can govern infrastructure that exists within your country. How do you govern infrastructure that's in space? A lot of countries don't understand how to do that. So, and they don't really understand why some of these changes that are proposed by the largest entities are, they don't really understand all the implications, why they want them, what they will do to their own countries. I think these are enormous issues, even though in some ways, think of it as the economic utility of terrestrial mobile spectrum. That's $1 trillion industry. Satellite industry is less than 10% of that. But from a sovereignty, security, self-determination perspective, it represents a much larger fraction of interest. So I think you're going to see those two things colliding, and a lot of it's going to come down to specific proposals at the WARC.
Can I maybe also jump in here, Mark? It does look like Work 27 is going to be almost dominated by satellite issues. One of my colleagues pointed out to me, I think 12 out of the 19 agenda items for Work 27, so more than half, are space-related, are satellite-related. Some of it, for sure, are the sovereignty interests that Mark is referring to. I think even more so, it's a reflection of how relevant space has become There are so many more use cases today that affect people's day-to-day lives than there have been in the, I don't know, 30 years that I've been in this industry, between D2D and the broadband connectivity. There are new technologies that are forcing, more challenges. Oftentimes these works have been, let's name it, a fight between terrestrial wireless interests and those of us who use spectrum from space. And there'll still be some of those fights. But there's also tension within the industry between GSO, between NGSO, and then there are the sovereignty issues that Mark talks about. But fundamentally, it's a reflection of the enormous progress that the industry has made in making ourselves more relevant to humanity in everyone's day-to-day life, whether that's modern warfare, whether that's broadband connectivity, whether it's just permeating everything, which I think is very, very positive. And the trick will be to make sure that we don't get on the other side of Work 27 with a regulatory framework that stifles the innovation that's taking place across the sector on the one hand, and on the other hand, preserving these mission-critical services that are already out there. And that's a lot easier said than done to get that balance right. But for sure, Work 27 will be dominated by satellite issues.
Agree. Okay.
Oh, if I may rebound, I think I want to rebound on what you said on modern warfare. I mean, what we really see is twofold. First of all, communications are absolutely critical on the battlefield, absolutely critical. What we see happening in Ukraine is more and more UAVs, so unmanned vehicles, all sorts, becoming used. And the third thing is the dual use of things. I mean, we've signed an enormous contract with the French MOD of 1 billion over 10 years, which is very new in the military doctrine, because what they really learned from the Ukraine battlefield, and that's pretty new, is that non-military services or devices or objects are really used for warfare. And I think this is putting the communications really in the center of the modern warfare. And also the fact that the MODs are starting to be open to use, I mean, again, dual objects is really putting the satellite business at the core of this industry.
Okay. Ali, did you have any comments?
I want to give an answer by approximation of adjacent market. If we look at the GNSS market, it's dominated by 4 constellations. But because of countries' sovereignty, the journey didn't stop there. You will see that countries, they are still launching, some countries, they are still launching their own GNSS application. It could be a geostationary system or a LEO system or a ground segment system. So the story didn't stop because of sovereignty. And to draw a parallel line in our market, yes, I think LEO constellation will be present, but the sovereignty will let us think creating another opportunity for us in creative manner.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to go to another lightning question now. Again, sort of being brave today, doing more than one. So, very quick answer to this one, a slightly different question. Outside of defense and government, can you name me one other vertical that excites you and why? And can you answer that within 30 seconds?
I can start with one. Definitely for us, aero and maritime, I mean mobility. We see a lot of tractions. We've signed 1,500 tails, 600 being actually connected and working, both in the commercial aviation, in the private jet aviation segment, and also the maritime segment is growing. And by the way, thanks to some of you in the room, because we are sometimes competitors, but also many times partners in that. Well, this is going really well. There is a lot of traction.
Interesting. Let me go, Ali, 30 seconds. A market that excites you for Space 42, outside of government and defense.
I will say the D2D, it is a big promise. We are approaching it in a very creative manner. We are simply creating our own supplier because we didn't find a supplier who will offer this, a seamless platform that can offer for the satellite operators an infrastructure sharing platform and offer us as an end user the ability to serve our MNOs.
Okay. Adel, outside of government and defense, which one excites
Look,
you?
I think Jean-François answered it correctly. I do have Jean-Philippe on my team, and Jean-Philippe is right there. And I call him Jean-François all the time, so I'm sorry for going. Look, Aero is exciting, and although the news you'll see that Starlink is gaining incredible traction is absolutely true, but the demand is so big. Jean-François alluded to it. We've installed more than 500 electronically steered antennas of a multi-orbit capability on multiple airlines. We've won more than 1,000 tails just last year, so it is a buoyant market. But I'll tell you one other. We don't talk a lot about media. We love our media business. Yes, it's declining, and yes, it's challenged, but it is fundamentally strong, cash generative, and the demand for real-time distribution of media like Super Bowl and Olympics and PGA and Formula One is buoyant, right? So we love that market as well.
Mark?
Yeah, commercial mobility in general, I think because of the rise of autonomy, so autonomous land vehicles, air vehicles, just like agriculture, the mobility markets are really enormous. And I think just to emphasize, I think we have partnerships with every one of the operators up here in one form or another on mobility. I think it's going to, again, to be able to offer something competitive, reliable, sustainable. It's going to require partnerships, shared infrastructure kinds of applications, and that's what we're doing. It's our fastest growing business.
And finally, Dan?
Well, it's always hard to go at the end on these, so I'll pick something that is more obscure today, but that I think is going to have growing importance in the future, given how our industry is evolving, which is space-to-space communications. So, you know, there's a proliferation now of all types of different constellations flying in all sorts of different orbits, doing different things, communication services, Earth observation services, again, operating at different altitudes. But we are seeing, and again, I talked about it a moment ago, we're launching our Telesat Lightspeed constellation, first launch end of this year, but it has, each of the satellites has 4 optical inter-satellite links, which makes the constellation immensely receptive to being interconnected with everyone else's constellation. You can do it optically, you can do it through RF, and you know, and there are sovereignty applications associated with that, but there are lots of other applications associated with it, and that is a segment that we're very excited about, and that I think is going to be growing a lot as we develop sort of systems of systems and have more interoperability between constellations and different types of constellations.
Excellent. I'm going to go one more question, and I'm going to open it up to audience questions. I know some questions are beginning to fly in. A lot of you sort of spoke about, in the first couple of answers, the industry needing to rethink things, rethink everything about the way that you've worked before. And given what Starlink is doing, you know, when you look at your capital expenditure strategies, are you going to have to refresh faster in a more dynamic way than ever before? Talk about that. You talked about rethinking things. Tell us what that directly means when you're looking at your CapEx and what you're going to be doing over the next few years.
Sure. Well, so for us, I mean, our biggest single investment near term is the next generation MEO. our MEO experience has proven that this backbone in space, and connected to what exactly Dan was just talking about, being able to move traffic and optically or RF connect different constellations is very compelling. And our investment in that new constellation is very different in terms of how we do it from the past. We believe the LEO, there are plenty of players in LEO, right? Some of them are sitting here on the stage, and investing in LEO as another player we didn't think would be the right type of way of putting your capital to work. So we're going to be building this expansive MEO capability. We're going to do it in a different way with collaboration with some of the big partners. One of them is sitting right here, K2, with Quran, where we're using this incredibly advanced bus, mega bus, of 20 kilowatts capability, married with our payload, and the ability to expand this exactly notion that Dan was talking about, networks within networks, because we have real estate and we have power to do multi-missions in that constellation. Everything that we talked about, whether it's space situational awareness, missile tracking, defense applications, UHF payloads, et cetera, et cetera. So we think that is the right way to deploy capital to build that capability globally, pole-to-pole coverage versus just doing the same exact things you did in the past. So a shift in our approach to innovation.
Okay. So when it comes to Space 42, I think we are learning today how to do more with less because of AI. And the ultimate approach will be that the integrations of all geostationary products with SATCOM. And this will be our unique proposition going forward. So when it comes to government, we are thinking how to make the end user do a lot more than today by integrating many products to him. The next, when it comes to the commercial market, we think, again, I will let Mark elaborate more about it because I talked about equities more than him, and how this approach will solve many problems to satellite operators and to end users.
Let me go to Jean-François, because obviously, you're investing a lot in LEO capability. How are you going to do it quicker, faster, more dynamically in the future?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very good topic. I mean, and obviously, this is absolutely clear that, when you ask what would we, your first question was, what would be our wish for our partners in the room, which are the industrial, the industry which is making our satellite. The first one was open standards and interoperability, but it could have been, and Adel was saying it, moving faster, quicker. This is absolutely clear. We need to go there. So the first thing is we need to go there with our current partners. I mean, Airbus, which is probably in the room, which is helping us building the 440 satellites we are going to launch. I mean, we've been completely recapitalizing our shareholders. I mean, recapitalizing the company. Lately, we've ordered an additional 440 satellites to strengthen the OneWeb current generation. By the way, the business is growing very nicely and very fast. I mean, last semester we had 60% growth, and this is ongoing. So that's the first answer. And then the second one is looking further in the future. Because this constellation with the launch of 440 satellites will be operational until the, let's say, years 2030, 2031. So the next question is looking further than that. I mean, we are engaged, by the way, together with Adel and our colleagues of Viasat, which are, I'm sure, in the room. We are engaged in a very ambitious project, which is called IRI Square, which is building the second generation constellation with the support of the European Commission, of ESA, and there as well. I mean, we are working with the ecosystem, Airbus, TAS, Thales, Alenia Space, also some startups. I'm thinking of Aerospace Lab to really build this constellation and to change the rhythm and to change the pace. This is absolutely critical for our industry. That's sure.
Mark, what beyond Viasat 3? Are there going to be any changes in terms of how you do things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Viasat 3. So we launched one in the fall. It's just now being deployed. Things are going the way they're supposed to on the deployments. But Viasat 3, the main thing there was to drive down the cost of bandwidth and be able to have enormous flexibility. So it has some really big advances that are just getting started. But how do you make thousands or tens of thousands of beams from a satellite instead of just hundreds? Things like that are there, be able to follow things around. But when I say rethink things, I mean, Viasat 3 it's a big innovation. We've got new things coming that'll be more cost effective, more creative. But when we talk about rethinking, I'm going really back to basics, which is like, think of space is now an economic battlefield because it's so important. So what are the basic scarce resources in space? Spectrum, orbits, mass. Is it really a good thing to put 1 million tons of stuff into LEO a year, all of which has to burn up in the atmosphere? And if I'm one country that doesn't like another country doing it, what do I do about that? What are the tools and mechanisms for that? What's the role of regulation? What's the role of national access? How much is too much in space? How should spectrum and spatial resources be allocated? I think these are the kinds of things that are going to be fought out in the work to some extent, but also industry really needs to understand how others turn those raw ingredients into competitive advantage and what that means not only for their institutions, but for their national security. I think those are when people start having those debates, we'll know we're onto the right track.
Okay, Dan, if I can just get a quick answer from you for that one in terms of light speed, how you will do things differently in the future?
We're operating, all of us, in such a dynamic environment. The technology's changing very quickly. The companies that are participating in our sector, that's evolving very quickly. The use cases have evolved very quickly. And then hand in hand with that, the geopolitical environment has evolved very quickly. And all of us are operating on a global scale. And so we have to take all of those things into account day to day as we evolve our businesses. And so we've completely rethought our technology. We've gone from GEO to LEO. It's a very different infrastructure. And then I think this geopolitical environment is challenging us to rethink how we engage out there in the world. We talked a little bit about it in terms of, this dynamic between heightened sovereignty concerns on the one hand, and on the other hand, a desire, an industrial kind of logic of why consolidation still makes sense in terms of capturing scale and whatnot. But there's tension between those two, and so rethinking how can we get the benefits of consolidation, and by that I mean having greater scale, having greater scope in terms of the resources that we put in space, the things that we're procuring on the ground. Short of consolidating, how can we work with one another? And there are examples right across this panel in terms of how we're all thinking about that.
Okay, we've got lots of questions from the audience. I'm going to try and get through as many as I can. I'll maybe just ask one of you a question and get a response from you. So we have a question here. Is the industry too quick to label GEO as in decline when it may just be legacy GEO being disrupted by new entrants with different cost structures? So Mark, can you give us a very quick answer to that question?
Yeah, I think LEO and GEO are different animals, but for the end user, they're intended to do the same thing, right? And so what you really want to be doing is comparing them as why are the economics different, why are the speeds different. There's no reason for any of those things. same power on the ground, doesn't matter what orbital altitude it comes from, other than latency, which is, I don't mean to dismiss, and that's good reason for multi-orbit. But other than latency, which is one of the ways to deal with that is through multi-orbit, there is no inherent reason that GEO is not competitive.
Okay. Adel, I'm going to go for you for the next question. I'm trying to get
can I just mark?
Okay, very quickly, yeah.
Very quick. We have the largest GEO constellation in the world, right? The game has changed for GEO, from our perspective. GEO is very relevant for very specific applications. But the traffic, the non-relevant traffic is moving to LEO and MEO. That's what we see. Yeah. So we see the future of GEO, but not at the same applications that we see today.
Okay. I'm going to stick with you for the next question. Oh.
And if I may, I can only add to that, yes, we should not oppose GEO and LEO. We are running both for different usages, but the GEO business is also going to remain and to be key. I mean,
absolutely.
Okay. There is no better ways to distribute video, and usages on GEO connectivity will remain as well, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try like one of you for one question. We've got about 8 minutes. Try and get as
we're
many
through.
We're
going to be disciplined now.
I'm trying, everyone. I'm trying. So Adel, just you for this question, hopefully. What supply chain bottlenecks are impacting your ability to deliver?
That one's for me.
Would you like to answer that? That was for me, but...
Oh, no, I want Adel to answer
look,
that.
There are multiple, right? There are multiple supply chain challenges that we have to deal with, not just in space, but also on the ground. Yeah. And therefore, open standards, compliance to new standards in the industry is so critical to us. But there are multiple, Mark.
Okay. Dan, you're going to take the next one, if that's okay. Do you believe space-based data centers are real or just hype? And then it says SpaceX filed a proposal with the FCC to build 1 million satellites. So do you believe space-based data centers are real or just hype?
It's not something that Telesat is focusing on right now. We have our hands quite full building out an advanced LEO broadband constellation. But it's hard to second guess tech visionaries like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. So I for one wouldn't dismiss it.
Okay. Ali, I'm going to go to you for the next question.
Okay.
So this is an interesting one. Considering the increasingly sparse RF spectrum availability, how do you expect lasercom technology to change the SATCOM ground segment?
Well, this is a very interesting question. Actually, we looked at it, especially when in terms of security for small countries, because if you have a problem, if your problem is next door, you worry about the leakage of the information next to you. So laser will improve the gateway, especially if you have an area with less rain or less shade or less clouds. So it improves the security of the gateway. So yeah, it could happen in the future.
Okay. Mark, I'm going to go to you for a question now. In terms of sovereignty, how do you see the Golden Dome initiative, and do you think other countries will follow?
Well, certainly it should be evident that missile defense is an enormously important component of national security. So I think you're going to see lots of countries do the most they can in missile defense. I mean, for countries of every size ought to be certainly aware of what the latest technology is and how to apply it. Absolutely.
Okay. Next question. I think I'll go for you for this one, Ali.
Okay.
It's how important is true direct-to-device NTN service in the future?
It is very important if you get the ingredients right. So the end user should not feel it. It has to be seamless when it comes to roaming, and it has to be economically very achievable, meaning that if you charge a premium, it will not go through. So if the ARPU is around 5 to 10%, it is a winning ingredient.
I may get a couple of you to answer the next question. Do all 4 GEO operators agree it's time to review power flux density limits for NGSO constellations, and with this being one of the issues of WARC 2027?
I'll maybe, are you just throwing that up?
I'm going to throw this one out there, which is dangerous, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I for one, for sure, think that those limits should be re-examined. I think that a lot of time has passed since those rules were put in place, and that they should be re-looked at again in a balanced way. I don't believe it's officially on the WARC 27 agenda, but invariably it'll be discussed at least in the corridors and the like.
Anyone else on this one?
Yeah, mostly I think what it's referring to is what's called EPFD, or equivalent power flux density, which really is very specific. It only has to do with rate of emissions from NGSO into satellites in the GSO arc. It has just been the biggest red herring, because one of the things about NGSOs is there are satellites in all directions in the azimuth. The only ones that are affected are the ones that are directly in the path of equatorial geosynchronous satellites. So the notion that somehow they have to emit more radiation towards the equator in order to increase their capacity is kind of insane, because they have so many satellites to choose from. So yes, that is going to be, it's going to be a big issue. It's often characterized as somehow GEO preventing the growth of LEO. Kind of the flip side of it is, it looks a lot like certain LEO operators are trying to inhibit the capabilities of GEO operators who can compete effectively with them, especially in regional areas that are so important to sovereign countries. I think it's gonna be a big issue.
Okay. We'll try and get a couple more questions in. We're just about a couple of minutes left. I'll go for Jean-François for this one. Your MSS spectrum is showing itself to be immensely valuable. How do you ensure you retain it against opposition with deeper pockets?
I'm not sure I understood your question.
Your MSS spectrum is showing itself to be immensely valuable. How do you ensure, as an industry, we retain it against opposition with deeper pockets?
No, it's clear that the MSS spectrum is a precious resource. I mean, I was with some of you attending the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona 1 month ago. I mean, there were 2 topics in this Congress, which is, of course, the area where mobile operators and operators in general are gathering. I mean, there was the AI topic, and the second one was satellite and direct-to-device. And this is a spectrum for direct-to-device. And clearly, as we discussed in the current geopolitical situation, there will be a very important tender in Europe for the MSS spectrum that will happen mid-27, and this will be an interesting moment.
Okay, I've got one more question, and sadly it's just for Mark, this one. And I feel this is the most popular question from the audience, so I apologize for this in advance. No, but this is like the big question that everybody wants to know the answer to. Why do you wear 2 watches?
Okay, I get that. So I am into fitness. I'm into fitness, and I have different watches from different fitness companies that take the same, and this is an important observation for an engineer. You take the same raw sensor data, and they make very different interpretations about how well did I sleep? What is my VO2 max? Am I getting better or worse? So what you really want is this is microcosm 5, you want divergent perspectives. You want to reconcile them and then try to figure out whether or not you're actually improving your fitness or not.
I thought it was disaster recovery. That let's make sure one fails and it's the other one.
Sometimes
he wanted
too.
the redundancy. He's
Yes,
always
exactly.
emphasized one-for-one redundancy.
Another one, resilience.
I might have known we'd get resilience and redundancy into that answer. We're just about out of time, so can we give a big thank you to these awesome panelists today? And we also want to say a big thank you once again to our OGS sponsor, Thales Alenia Space. Let's run this great video again.
Lynk.
you.